Hello, welcome to Warblog. Today we're going to look at the Battle of Dong Zui. I don't know how you say that. It's sort of quite an interesting one. I mean, to put it into perspective, it's been a long time since I've done a historic one, and due to the lack of war in the real world, it looks like I'm going to have to do more. I mean, the Tigray conflict sort of over, not much happening in Yemen. Afghanistan's gone, but obviously it's not a big issue. But there's plenty of these things. I've got my book. I've brought it back, I think, but I might not have. Yeah, where might it be? There it is. It's in the kitchen. Get it. It's the Vietnam War Almanac by James Woolbanks. I've mentioned this before, but it's really good, and you just go through it sort of, day by day as to what happened, and it's split up into things like ground war. Then it would have things like sea war, ground war, just stuff South Vietnam, US domestic. So that's sort of talking about what's happening in America, US government policy changes, and so it's saying what happens, but it also includes what I'm looking for is the ground war basically, and it will say on such a date this happened. And sometimes the activities are so small that they're hardly worth really creating scenarios on. But I came across this. I mean, I didn't really read too much into it, but it's quite in depth. There's more to it than I thought. I thought, oh well, this is just going to be one of those skirmishes, and I keep forgetting everything because I've got a brain like a sieve. And apparently, 65 is quite early on in the year. Even now, I can't figure out the significance of that. But I think the significance of it is that every time I do anything on this computer, it's whirring away, updating, and it's continually updating. Anyway, so the key thing is that it's quite early in the war, and it's sort of before the US major involvement. And what that means is that the ARVN, the South Vietnamese forces, were sort of on their own to some extent, and were sort of expected to defend themselves. I mean, I don't want to draw a direct correlation, but maybe similarly to the way the Afghan forces were supposed to defend themselves against the Taliban, and they weren't very good at it. But the Americans were sort of like quite reluctant to actually commit any ground troops to support them. They were just there as sort of advisory. I don't want to say what they were there as because I'm not certain. For example, they had this special forces camp here, but there were only about 50 of them, basically directing, the formation of the defensive lines and the activity, and they're providing air support. But the thing is, with this one, it's part of a much longer process, a part of a much larger series of activities. The Wikipedia thing is quite good. There's the other one which I haven't really looked at because I can't really get my head fully around this. So it's actually a major battle. So I didn't know that when I picked it up, but and it's quite complex in the sense that a lot of things are happening in various places that I can't quite get my head fully around. I haven't even really read the introduction, but even coming back down to the background, and I've read a bit of that, the Prelude. So I sort of went through a bit of this. Since May 65, the VC offensive in Phuc Long province, and I don't really know where that is, or had been in full swing. And so there's a lot happening. VC 271 regiment, supported by 840th Battalion and local sapper units, attacked the district town of Phuc Long. Now, I don't know where Phuc Long is,
the capital of the province, simultaneously the 272 overran South Vietnamese government positions in the subsector of Phuoc Binh. Now the thing is, well, I read this before and I thought, well, hang on, there's a lot going on here. We could actually try to sort of model all of this, and all I'm trying to do is get rid of this Dong Xoai or whatever it is. During a brief occupation of Phuoc Long district, the VC destroyed several major strategic hamlets in the surrounding area, such as Ba Ra, Than Kim, Thun Loi, Phu Rain, Daki, etc. So I could have put all these places on the map so that you'd go around destroying them, and that would have been a scenario, and I could do it next. But the point is, picking into this, for me, at this stage, essentially, is really just sort of like thinking, oh, hang on, there's more to this. So I'm not really fully familiar with what's happening, but essentially there's a lot more. And so this is just the prelude, so there's other things happening, and sort of trying to model this is quite complex, and it's not. A lot of the things that I do, I just sort of think, oh, right, okay, I'll just follow some simple instructions. But the Vietnam War has always been quite complex, because the things that have happened haven't been really things that you can say, okay, well, there's a major battle to take this river or something. There's quite a lot of disparate things happening all over the place. But anyway, so what I'm saying is, there's a lot more to this that can actually be possibly modelled and built in to support the battle that we're dealing with here. But it says it lasted over 10 days, but I think the thing up here says it's just 4 days, 5 days. But so the battle starts on the 9th of June, so to speak. And so going back to the map, so what we've got is this sort of my interpretation of things. Now, I don't really know where things are. I put the Special Forces base there. I put it there first, but it's supposed to be to the east, but they want to recapture the road between the town and the base. So I presume there must be some space. It might even be further out. As you can see, it details certain things. Now, it details where the 271 was, the 272, but it doesn't say anything about these units at all. So I've assumed the 273, 274, 480 were sort of doing things. So what you find is there's a 273. The 274 appear later on, sort of around here, and then some others appear down here. But essentially what happens is you've got the 237 elements of the 237. So you've got all these sort of AVR troops, and it actually sort of specifies down here to some extent what these numbers are. Yeah, I mean, it says the district was defended by 200 local Vietnamese soldiers drawn from the 237 and 238 militia companies and the 111th Regional Company. Now, 200 is just one company, but I've given you one unit for the 327, one unit for 328, one unit for the 111. So you can see that the 327, 328, 111. So there was one there, one there, one there. And I looked at the numbers and I thought, that's just stupid. I mean, they would have split up. So I doubled it up. So you've now got two from the 237, 238, and 111 there. And they've got their support with their, it specifies it. They were supported by one armoured squadron of 6 armoured vehicles. So I can't do a squadron, so I've just given them a little company there, considering the relativity of it all, it probably suffice. And two 105mm howitzers. And again, I've sort of had to give you 2 counters for that, because there's so much going on, and I had to extend the range, but they were to sort of the east of the city. And you've got these units here, which are the Cambodian Civil Irregular Defence Group, which the civilian irregular defence groups were made up of non-Vietnamese people. So, Cambodians, they probably had a Laos group, Chinese group or whatever. But so these were here as well, and I've given them quite a hefty defence because there were. It does say in here 200, so that's almost an entire company. So there's basically as many of these as there are of these. And then there's the 11th United States Special Force personnel and 9 men. I didn't even put this B team because it's just not worth it. So essentially that's the sort of the general basis of it all. I'll go into the map now just to sort of explain what happens from my point of view and perspective, and because I'm not going to play it all through to get to that level. Essentially the Special Forces go on alert, prompting the Viet Cong to actually, they were building up, but as soon as they went on alert, they started to attack. But what they hadn't done is they hadn't pre-reconnoitred the area where they were coming through. They'd missed these defensive and mine areas, so they get mauled coming through that. But essentially they take this. It doesn't really state fully how things happen or the timeline of events. It doesn't say they capture it. It says basically it just infers at a later point that they have to recapture it. So it doesn't say that they captured it, but they said that at some point we had to recapture the Special Forces base, which assumes that it was captured at some point. But looking at the numbers, it makes sense. The 272 were over here, and they had a lot of it says it here, sapper units. Now I'm going to assume the sapper units were getting through the barbed wire and the mine, so they've got some there, just engineers, some there, and you've got a little guy down here. I don't think you've got any over here. I think you might have one here that appears in turn 4 or something. So they sort of take that. The 118th air group, whatever, bring in some sort of air support. And just to give you an idea of the intensity of it all, because it was intense. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find this quickly enough. But basically it states that, here it is. Following their last mission, this is on the second part of the sort of the thing of second part of sort of what happens during the battle, not the first part, but during their last mission, which I'll put into perspective in a bit. The 118th Aviation Company immediately returned to Ben Hoi. During the first day of heavy fighting, every helicopter in the unit had sustained damage, including the loss of one helicopter and its entire crew. I think that's quite telling. I mean, the loss of one helicopter doesn't sound like a lot, but the fact that every one of them sustained damage indicates that there must have been a tremendous amount of sort of anti-aircraft coming up, against these people. It wasn't a small skirmish, and so there's that to put into perspective. And again, because it's quite complex, the subtleties of the game balance might need adjusting, and I probably won't get around to doing that. But basically, they take this, and then what happens is they airlift in a bunch of. So if you scroll down here, we've got these units and all of that. So what happens is on turn 5, which is sort of the next step in the progress of the battle, perhaps later in the day, or I can't remember exactly when, you can read it in the Wikipedia article, the 7th Infantry, 1st Battalion 7th Infantry is airlifted into the, it's basically airlifted into the rubber plantation up here. But essentially, you can read it in the Wikipedia. I'll just paraphrase it now, save all that hassle, swapping between the two. The Viet Cong have sort of anticipated that. They've anticipated somehow that they would come down here, and they're in ambush. And so what happens is to reflect that, because I didn't want them to be put in there as hidden random units. They are sort of random, but they should appear on. So these units come in on turn 5. Now I don't know how the things will swing, but on turn 6, you get the 271 company. Basically, appearing around here to engage, and basically the I don't remember anything. The 1st Battalion, 7th Infantry Regiment get massacred. I mean, they're basically decimated. I mean, you know, you can read it in the Wikipedia thing. So what happens is we get the special forces here taken out. The reinforcements land at the rubber plantation, get wiped out. They put in some more reinforcements a bit after that. They get wiped out. Then they land at LZ2 and similarly get wiped out. So again, there's the same situation down here. So what you have for LZ2 is, so that's the lot on turn 5. So you then have the 52nd Ranger Battalion coming in at LZ2 on turn 9. So and to reflect the ambush on that, you've got the 271st. Again, it says the 271st. They seem to be up there, and then they seem to be down here. So I've just plonked in more. So there's probably too many units. But that, you know, I don't know how that we can balance that out. But they come in turn 10. So you end up with this sort of pattern of activity where you've got the special force attack, the rubber plantation situation, LZ2 down here. You get a lot of battle, a lot of sort of combat in the city or the built-up area as the Viet Cong sort of come in. You've got a lot of air activity coming in from the 118th, whatever it is, air unit, presumably inflicting a fair amount of damage, but they only suggest that there are I think maybe I should put in some actual air units, because I don't think it's just the Hueys, the helicopter gunships doing the work. I think they've got some aircraft as well, but maybe I didn't really think about that. And then what happens a few days later, things are going pretty badly. I mean, the Viet Cong are really sort of wiping out a lot of these units. There's a lot of heavy fighting, but presumably they're taking some hits themselves. But the Americans think, well, you know, this is not going well. Oh yeah, there's the 7th Airborne Battalion. They are airlifted in turn 15. So you get these. You can put these wherever you want. You might want to look at the Wikipedia article to sort of like figure out exactly where they appeared, but it just seemed that they sort of were airborne into the town. I think they came on a football pitch in the town somewhere. So you get all of these units, and that should, on turn 15, bolster the probably failing, if not completely routed situation on the map. But after that, things are still they're still struggling, there's still a fight, and the US command just says that we don't want them taking and keeping this place. We've really got to make sure that doesn't happen. So they put these units, the 1st Battalion, 503 Infantry Regiment, with these 319th Artillery, 3rd Battalion Company Artillery. Basically, they brought them into a landing stage about 10-15 kilometers away, Ben Louis or something. I can't remember what it is. It's in the Wikipedia article. And they're basically ready to sort of airlift them in at the next opportunity. But the Viet Cong have actually by then retreated and left. And so they didn't engage. So you don't get, if you know, by turn 22 you can play that with or without these units, so they're actually quite tough, but whether or not it will make a lot of difference. And I've put in, you know, turn 23 you get another lot of helicopters, and maybe I should put in some air support on that. So essentially that's the sort of playthrough. I mean, it's 18 minutes just to explain that. So we get special forces attacked, LZ rubber plantation, LZ2, reinforcements generally by the AVRVN sort of paratroopers, you know, and then the sort of the redeployment of the US reinforcements, you know, on the assumption that these Viet Cong were going to capture this place and take control, but they left, and then that's it. But again, it's part of a lot more of activity elsewhere, both before and after. And so I think that needs to be looked into, possibly a larger map showing the sort of more general flow, and just getting an understanding. I mean, for example, it says that this is War Zone D, which I think it's in there. somewhere it states that it's war zone D. To be quite honest, I don't. I've tried to explain it because I think that that's the essence of the historical scenarios, and I think once you get into sort of the analysis and consideration of the historical scenarios, the gameplay is less relevant. I mean, obviously it's important, but to some extent we're looking at, say, trying to understand what was happening. For example, I didn't really know where where anything was, and I still think that you could turn around and say, well, actually the special forces base was over here, or there were two of them. Maybe I shouldn't have doubled up on the 271 because they appear here and then they appear over here, so there's twice as much as that. Maybe I should give them a few extra units to reflect, say, a more potential sort of defensive perimeter. I'm not sure what this was. It's probably just very, very boggy marsh. It's on the map, but as it is, it looks like quite a nice sort of defensive consideration. So presumably, it's a water body of some sort that they're not going to just wade through. They probably move quite slowly through the jungle. So I don't know what will happen, but I guess get the feeling that the Viet Cong will walk right over this, because we don't really have much indirect fire to sort of to do anything, but we'll see how it works. I'll give it a little bit of a blast. Well, there you go. So he took 2.1 damage getting in there, because these are 3 minefields. He took 0.7. So that is sort of to some extent reflecting 1.1. What we know is the historic, but the thing is, I don't think really I should be able to get into there, because if that's 2 to get to there, I shouldn't be able to get into there. So that's a game problem that I had not considered, and I'm certainly not going to troubleshoot it now. But I was hoping that something like that would happen to some extent. I wasn't saying that I had that in mind, but it would be difficult to sort of to approach this in some regards, because that helps with the defense, because now they're weakened up, we can actually start to say maybe even fight back with these. I mean, this stack here is got 2.1 down. If we bring all our Hueys on, we might be able to destroy some of these units and actually start to sort of make good on things. Again, because I'm just playing this in the video and trying to get through some of the basic opening moves, we might have sort of decided to sort of hold back with the units and to bring the engineers in first to clear a path. That's a consideration and an option. I mean, let's move these guys forward. They're only moving 1 hex, so that fact that we can move 2 is not good. He can't get in there for some reason. I'll have to look into that, but there's certainly no way I'm going to sort of start doing that in earnest. So you can get down the road quite quickly. So in theory, you should only be able to move 1. Right. So that's the first turn. So we've moved into there. So we're being hacked down. So historically, it reflects what happened, because they suffered quite extensive casualties coming out. I'd show you the Wikipedia, but you have to take my word on that. I have to keep proving everything I say. Right. So we've got no air support. we can either hold in there, because the thing is, if we attack, they get defensive bonus for the jungle and that, and I don't think I want to do that. But if we hold, we get to recover, which is nice. But we can probably bring in some artillery, and I think we should probably bring it down on this stack here. No effect, no effect. Oh, that was good. 2.3, 3.3. So that's what I'm sort of getting at, really. There's a subtlety of being able to chisel away, chip away at the offensive, assault, whilst at the same time being overwhelmed, because we could sort of thwart this. This could be tight, but they're going to probably attack now, but they've been reduced in some capacity, but not overwhelmingly. It's not as though we had such massive air power that we've managed to sort of destroy this. The approach has reflected maybe what you might consider to be the sort of the loss that you might experience on an approach like that. The special forces have not fought back. Could, but I want to recover them, so they're basically going to hold down in there. So I'm not sure how that reflects things, but we could be firing back, but not going to. Redeploying all this, possibly. We've got these units here which we can move somewhere, but to be quite honest, I don't really want to start faddling around with all that, because I'm not going to record for too much longer. Right, so what we've got now essentially is these units have recovered. We're going to use our .1. Okay, right, so we're now going to go into our main assault on the special forces base. Now this is going to be interesting, because I've not calculated, my brain's not working at that capacity at the moment to have anticipated in advance what the odds are going to be. I'm just doing it because there's no other option when we've got all of them. They've come through the barbed wire and the minefields, they've suffered the artillery defensive fire, everything you'd expect. They've suffered moderate losses, low to moderate losses, and this is what their attack would have been. 7-1, so that's 11 versus 1.35. And that's strange, because I would have thought that the special forces would have been a lot more than that. That doesn't look right to me. I mean, we know that they're on 1, but even so, they should have been this. I mean, they were a bit below 1, 0.9, but they should have been doubled to 0.8 in jungle when they were in a fort, so they should have been about 3. That's sort of upset me a bit now, because oh, look, I haven't put the base in there. There's no base. I put the base in over here, and then I deleted everything, and I thought that I'd put it all back together, but obviously I haven't put the base in there, so the base would have given them 3 times. So there's one of the points of me playing these games, but that would have given them, like, no, let's say 4. So there would have been a 2-1, and it would have been, yeah, I can accept that. That was interesting. But obviously I've made an error, and considering I've gone 30 minutes through the game, I'm not going to, I could replay it, but I don't want to, I've got things to do. but I'm going to have to update that so that it is a base. It's a shame, but I don't think it's that important because I probably wouldn't get too much further in here. But I think, if you're a war game and you understand hex and counters, you can probably anticipate what's going to happen. It's going to be difficult. These are all going to get sort of doubled because they're in light urban. The similar sort of thing is going to happen as they come through here. We're going to get air support. So it's sort of going to be something, well, I don't think we can hold off on this, but we might, and it's going to come down to the dice rolls, and it's going to be an interesting sort of playthrough as to sort of see how things work, because you're going to have this sort of engagement up here, which is then going to sort of shift the balance of play up here, and then down here, shifting the balance of play there. And then you're going to have your air reinforcements. The Viet Cong don't get any reinforcements, so a bit by bit they should find that they're facing off against something that is a bit tougher than they might have hoped for. But on a 2-to-1 there, it could be that they get a retreat or don't. 2-to-1 is one of those odds that is sort of like it could go either way. The only thing I might say is that because I doubled this artillery up because it just seems as though they didn't have anything, but I didn't double theirs. I mean, they had sort of quite a lot, and I think when I put this in, what I meant to do was to put one there, one there, one there, to give them artillery from all sides, because basically the Viet Cong start pounding the town and defensive features with artillery or heavy mortars, heavy howitzers, heavy mortar companies. So I might add a few of those, obviously put the base in there, but that's it. I'm not going to go any further because that is a bit of an error and I want to correct that. But I hope you enjoyed that. It's been a while since I put in any scenarios, but also a historic one. And I've got the book, and I keep meaning to do it. And I sat down and did it. Basically, it's taken me a few days. I did the map, and 3 or 4 days later, it's still there. And last night, I thought I'd sit down and get through this. And the Wikipedia thing is quite complex, and it's not easy to follow. And but once I got into the swing of things, it all started to sort of like, well, this is quite interesting. And, I do tend to do more. I've got my book on the Korean War and I've got the Vietnam book with me. All the other stuff is somewhere else. But, I might start to sort of just really get some momentum behind adding Vietnam scenarios, because obviously with a lack of war going on in the world, peace breaking out everywhere, and there's no day-to-day stuff to follow up on. I look at the thing is not even looking at it as readily. Sometimes I look at South Front with a bit of dread that something's going to happen that's going to eat into my time, and fortunately nothing major is happening. The Tigray thing was interesting, but last I read that the Tigrays have now sort of moved back, and I didn't actually get any of that in game format. The sort of the advance of the Ethiopians north, but it seemed a bit samey. You could probably look at some of those scenarios and do that. But yeah, so in that light, I think I might try and, considering I now made the effort to get my Vietnam book from my other location, to go through a lot more, because I think the Vietnam War is interesting from the point of view that it's not wholly conventional. I mean, this was a big engagement, but I think that it also covers a lot of the, I just flick through it here really. I'm just going to flick through completely random ground actions. Ground war, 17th of June, we're looking at 65. Large ARVN forces clear and reopen Route 19, the strategic route through the Central Highlands. So, modelling that for the first time in 6 weeks, an armoured convoy from Quy Nhon gets through to Pleiku without being attacked by the Viet Cong. However, it is reported that 6 of the 10 main roads leading out of Saigon are completely controlled by the Viet Cong. So again, this is just reopening the Route 19. So, it reminds me instantly of this other game, and I will try to find it, because it was interesting. I've got lots of these. This one here, this is reopening this road, and I can almost apply this, and this was a really interesting scenario. I thought, well, hang on, this one really is interesting. It works. It works as a sort of gamey thing because of the way these sort of things work. They'll produce troops, and you've got to use the hearts and minds. They weren't using hearts and minds, but you have to reduce these down to reduce the prospect of more Taliban popping up on them. It's a bit sort of fast in its dynamics, and realistically you probably wouldn't expect new insurgents to just appear as frequently, but they don't appear that frequently. I seem to recall I was wondering whether it was working at all, but the thing is, I think that would be very similar to that scenario. I've closed the book now, so I don't know where it is, but that sort of Vietnam scenario, reopening the road between wherever. So hopefully I will get cracking into that, and get more scenarios up, and more YouTube videos up, etc. So if you are sort of following and watching war blog, the thing to bear in mind is I am still going and doing it. I feel as though I've sort of slacking up a bit, but which I haven't really. I'm still sort of looking and doing things, but I think that the pace that I was doing things at before has changed sort of rapidly. I mean, I was sitting there the other day and I was looking at it and I was thinking, my God, 91 pages. So that's over 900 scenarios. Admittedly, some of these more recent ones probably have a lot of to be done's. Coming soon. These are all sort of a bit of a cheat because they haven't been done yet. I mean, that's not a scenario, but all things said and done, I mean, that's 900 games, so to speak. They're all historically correct. It's a tremendous amount of work, and I was thinking, when did I get the time to do all this? It just seems that even this, I mean, look, this map, all these towns, all these roads, some of them are so complex and fiddly. You sort of think, well, it'd take a lot of time to sort of to actually do this if I wanted to do it now. So I think I've got a really solid base to be sort of working from, and as I said, I keep wanting to go back and sort of remodel some of these older scenarios. And I think I've done quite a few of these, go back and sort of readjust them and rework them and reconsider them. Sometimes they need, they actually need to sort of have some things updated. But you can look at this and you can sort of say, well, this is a historical scenario. I mean, we've got sort of probably links on Wikipedia and whatever this is here. They've even written up something about it. And you can start to adjust it and reconsider it. And to some extent, you can even sort of rebuild it. I mean, if this is how it works, then I could probably maybe change the map to that size. This is a small map, make it a bigger map, etc. I think it's the difference between the Iran-Iraq war. There's a really interesting one. This one here. This was the first one I did, Operation Fath al-Mubin. I did this really early on in the history of things, and I enjoy it, but it's sort of, I think there's something lacking there. The order of battle is quite historic, it's quite accurate, quite specific, although it could probably do with editing. And you get this sense that there's a sort of this pincher movement, which is what they did, but the map is very off balance. I mean, for example, I should really have had this sort of the edge of the board there, so shifting it all along so you could at least advance. It happens too much on the left, but I was never happy with it because it all seemed a bit sort of, I don't know, a bit sort of too much to the left, too compact, probably not really reflecting what might have happened, although I don't really know what might have happened. But I redid it, you see. Well, I've rebuilt the map, and so I haven't finished it yet. But basically, all I've got to do is slap on those counters, and you get a much better sense of geography. So they're coming up. The pincher movement will be here, down here, and then you've got this sort of all this terrain here to sort of do that pincher on. So you can almost imagine how the pincher would happen, coming down here, coming through here, and all the battle taking place in this open sort of area around Send or whatever. I can't remember where it would be, but there's Shush. So I mean, if we look at, Shush is there. So if you were to consider that our crescent formation around Shush is there, this is what I'm saying. This is the progress and development of scenarios, in that they're not just, for me it's a learning curve, and anyone looking at the site, it's a learning curve, and then sort of taking these things away and saying, well, how does that work, etc. So building up the scenarios. I mean, what I was sort of getting to there is, I mean, when you look at it, 900 scenarios, that's no small amount. So it's quite remarkable, really. But it's still yet to get any sort of momentum with people sort of like actively playing it and commenting and critiquing and analysing scenarios and situations like that. And so there is that sort of the lack of input on that side, which I think I wouldn't say is a problem, but I think if I had that, then I'd have a lot more motivation to sort of like to sort of keep up the pace that I've had over the years, which I do intend to keep up, but it's lacking a bit, mainly because I've got quite a lot of other sort of big projects that I'm sort of working on, and they always seem to be stomped for time no matter what I do, really. But I mean, because I've got a few people in theory subscribe to playing the game, and a mysterious Patreon. It's always, this is sort of like what blows my mind, really. It's become a war blog Patreon. I've got one Patreon at £3 a month. It's sort of like, hang on, I'm going to have almost a legal obligation to sort of keep things going, and so that sort of does have a small ironic. It's ironic because £3, I mean, £3, wow. But it's sort of, it still has, you sort of think, hang on. So now I have some sort of legal obligation. Otherwise, I have this Patreon sort of complaining, hey, you've not done a scenario, and your scenarios are rubbish, and things like that. So I do have to keep my Patreons happy now. But obviously, the more Patreons I've got, the happier I will be to keep them happy, etc., etc. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Obviously, that was the Battle of Xoai. I'll have to update that, and you can maybe play that and get familiar with the Vietnam War 65. And I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.